Hi, everyone, and welcome to Authors and Audiobooks, taking your written work to audio, basically for the first time, or if you need a refresher, that's what the group is all about. We have both authors and narrators in the group so that we can learn from each other. And today's topic is audiobook romance, clean versus steam. And how I came up with that topic was I posted the question in a Facebook group of, I believe it was historical romance readers, so not necessarily authors or narrators. But I'm learning more about historical romance and, as far as narrating. And so I'm trying to learn by being in some of these groups. And I posted in there, is there a midpoint between clean and steam? Oh my gosh, it ended up being a thread of about 100 comments. I mean, it was really, really active for a day or two. And so I thought, oh, that'd be a really good topic for the group from a narrator's perspective, because I'm thinking in terms of, we have the clean romance all the way up to erotica. So I'm not going to be doing erotica anytime in the near future. And the clean is sometimes just a little too clean. I would like maybe a little sizzle, in between. And so I just posed that question. And I think of it, it would be so helpful when we're as narrators, and I welcome Emma and Deanie today, who are joining in the conversation. It reminds me of when the movie theater ratings first came out. Gosh, I don't know how, I was pretty young, but you start out with general and PG and PG-13 and R and X, and, there's so many different levels. And so for me, it's very helpful when I see an audition on ACX where the author has taken the time to say either A, no explicit scenes or language, or B, yes, there are sexual scenes, and please be comfortable with doing those before you audition. Know that before you audition. So I'm just kind of throwing that out to the group today to see what your thoughts are, how it helps you choose books, perhaps from the narrator's point of view. What would help you determine? Is there something missing in the language for auditions, or what helps make or break a choice for you as a
You want me
narrator?
to start?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. The other day, I was looking at all the titles on ACX, and I just kept on seeing men with bare chests. So I said, "What's with all these bare chests?" I threw it out to the group. I got some, not angry, but people saying, "That's what makes money for us. You shouldn't," because I suppose I was degrading the whole idea, because I personally do not do erotica and I stay away from them. So, it was interesting. But anyway, I agree with you that it would be good if the author would give that kind of warning, because you don't want to be surprised. You don't want to start reading and in chapter 10, all of a sudden it
Right.
gets really, really steamy. So that's my 2 cents worth so far.
Emma, any feedback?
Yeah, so I my brand is Clean Reads. I'm the Clean Reads Queen, so that's all I do. I do a lot of clean romance, and I do some sweet romance as well.
And what is the difference? What is there a difference with that?
So there's no
Not
one definition. Some people swap the two, but in my understanding, clean is squeaky clean, right? There's like hardly anything, closed door completely. And sweet has a little bit more spice to it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it can go a little further. Some people swap the two and say that sweet is the cleaner one and clean is the spicier one, but it's a little hard to tell sometimes. But and that is that's a thing with narration too. It's like, I don't know what it's going to be, and is the spice going to be too spicy for me? I don't know. And so yeah, that's definitely something that I look for. So I am very appreciative of when authors put that in their auditions. But I also take every book that I'm going to audition for, and I look it up on Amazon, and I do the Amazon preview, and I will search for keywords
Okay.
either language and or sexual terms that usually come up
Oh, that's
in
a
these
great
books.
tip.
That's a
Um,
great tip. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, and if I can't see anything there or I'm still questioning and it's available on Kindle Unlimited, I'll get it on Kindle Unlimited and do that keyword search there as well.
So I've
So
never
that's
thought
how
about
I
the keyword
thank you.
search, because I have gone on and gotten the Kindle
Mhm.
unlimited version. You know, there was one not too long ago. It was actually ended up being pulled and had a really sweet title, and the cover was just a little, wasn't overly spicy, but and the audition really nice, really told a little story, and then bam, in the middle I was like, oh my goodness. So I was not prepared for that, but I was reading it through, the Kindle version of it, and I was like,
Sure.
okay, well, we'll just delete that audition and move on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the
but it
same with
actually being pulled.
sorry, the
Oh,
same with LGBTQ. Do I have that right?
mhm.
That I don't know if it's always mentioned up front. I believe a narrator friend of mine got, he won the audition, and only in the book further on he realized it didn't bother him, but I don't think there was any prior mention of that either.
Yeah,
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 there's a lot of things that authors tend to leave out. Authors, for the most part, just don't know. They don't know what they need to say. They
right,
don't
exactly.
know what makes sense for narrators to know up front because they're
Yeah.
on the other side completely. And so that's why, Pam, your group is so great, is for authors to learn what narrators need up
Yeah.
front in
Yeah.
Yeah,
order.
there's a lot of topics you could be really covering in depth with advice. It's just too bad we don't see more authors joining this group because
Yeah,
they
and
need to know.
I really, I had actually a little surge the last 2 days based on a
Good.
comment in the indie group. And so they might be too new to know that we're doing this. And I tried to make sure that they, saw the message and I posted. So hopefully, as it grows a little bit, people, and we'll see the replays and we'll see and hear. And yes, because, I've been doing them weekly. I may need to go to maybe every 2 weeks. But certainly anybody that has a topic, just message me or post it, and
Yeah.
I'll do my best to work it into the schedule. But it would be nice if perhaps not just ACX, but the publishing companies
Mhm.
would somehow maybe come to a like universal language for
Mhm.
us
Mhm.
where it is literally rated.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying explicit and there are explicit scenes, maybe
Mhm.
that means explicit means these terms will
Mhm.
be written, or
Yep.
PG-13 might be blah blah blah, or
Right.
something that would be related to audiobooks, because that would be so helpful.
Well, you
um,
could always come up with a little draft and run it by them, and
I might have to do that. I might have to
exactly.
do that.
You could be the
So
change maker.
that's actually, so I run Cat's Meow Productions and
Mhm.
we specialize in clean reads. Sorry.
That's okay. More the merrier.
Cat's Meow Productions. I have cats.
Oh, Cat's Meow. Okay, I was trying to figure out what were you just saying. Cat's Meow Productions. Okay.
And
We
on
specialize.
cue, on
Yes.
cue. There we go.
Thank you.
Good job. We specialize in clean reads. So I do that in my personal narration, but that's also what my company does because I saw a gap in the industry that's
Mhm.
wasn't being fulfilled. And so we completely specialize in it. And one of our goals is to create a rating system.
Oh, awesome.
So we have a
Oh,
rating system already, and our goal is to make a database of books, and that people can submit the book and rate the book using our rating system. And
Oh,
so people
great.
can then go search for books. And that's not a judgment call on the book at all.
Mhm.
It's simply so that the reader knows what to expect going into the book.
mhm.
And
Now, is
they
this
can
outside
decide
of
for
your
themselves.
production company as well? Other
It's a
books, or
branch of our production
it's a branch?
company.
So
Mhm.
can you share what you've come up with as far as, I mean, you don't have to if you're
Sure.
not
Yeah.
complete yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. We don't have the database up yet. We just
no, but I mean the
we're still
ratings,
gathering
the
that. Yeah.
different ratings that you have.
Let me pull that up. I can't remember what they are. So of course, because it goes with my company with
Hmm.
Cat's Meow, they're
Yeah.
all cat. names.
Oh, of course, of course.
I have an Oriental short hair cat, and it's so
Oh,
beautiful.
I love that. I am obsessed with cats
Yeah,
completely. I have 4.
absolutely.
So, sorry about that. I'm just trying to
That's
get
okay.
into
No,
my
that's
back
okay.
office here.
I'm still working on my lights here, so I seem to just be
Yeah, it's
really
rather
bright.
bright now.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is a little bright.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we have a content disclosure, and it's
Oh, for
4
now we do.
different categories between language, sex/intimacy, violence, and drug use. And it ranges. And the hard part about books is you can't just make a blanket statement that I'm not going to do any books about this topic, because you never know what that book is going to be. For
Right,
example,
right.
I narrated a book about a girl who had been abducted and raped. And it wasn't graphic, but they did go into a little bit of detail of her experience.
Mm-hmm.
But the book was about the hope afterwards of her healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a very beautiful book. And so I can't just make a blanket statement and say, I'm not going
Right.
to do any books that involve this, because you never know. And so we have a rubric that kind of just ranges from, so for language, it ranges anywhere from no swearing all the way to racial slurs and 5+ mentions of the aforementioned words. So I range it from how many times a word is used.
Okay.
Cat's Meow doesn't produce any books containing the F word at all. That's kind of our hard line there. And so anything less than that, it depends on the usage, how many times, those types of things, because there's just a big spectrum.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we do. And then, so our rating right now is we have, so we do a little bit of math and, average it out to see what all of these equal. And then we have cool kittens, which are safe for all ears.
Oh, okay.
Tomcats, which is safe for teen ears. Alley cat, which is better for mature ears. And a wildcat, which is mature ears only.
I love that. I love that.
Love it.
Rating things.
And
Yes.
Emma, I'm really glad you also mentioned, because the whole diversity thing and the racial slurs, and also that could be a category all by itself.
Absolutely
because
could be.
if you get into a book and there's very demeaning content, sometimes if it's historical, you almost have to agree, because the N word, for example, in historical context is acceptable, but it's very, very hard for the narrator to actually use that.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that sort of built into one of your categories.
Yeah, for sure. And that's something as a narrator too, that we have to make decisions for ourselves of, if we do get this historical book, is that a book we want to do, whether or not it's accurate or not? Is that something we want to be a part of?
Yeah.
So, and that's something we do with all our castings as well, is we have a content disclosure that goes out in our castings, so narrators know upfront what to expect in the books that we're
The other
producing.
thing, Pam, that kind of fits here, and we've talked about it in our previous little talk, is the whole thing of when do you use a pseudonym. The only time I've ever used a pseudonym was not for erotica, because I don't do that at all, but for a book that was so poorly written that I just didn't want to be associated with it. So I found a nice little pseudonym for that. So I'm sure a lot of people who do the steamy books, the narrators, would probably use pseudonyms for
Yeah,
these.
many do.
Yeah, because what was it in one of the breakouts, one of the well-known gentleman narrators said something about, he used a pseudonym because, he was, I don't know, picking up his daughter from school or something, and he didn't want the parents to misinterpret what he was reading or listening to or whatever. But something else in the first little Western I did, which made me realize how much I like the Westerns, Western romance, it was actually listed as a cozy mystery. And as I got into it, I don't think it was more of a mystery, suspense, romance. I don't know how cozy it was, but it didn't have a lot of foul language in it, but it had GD in it. And I didn't know it until I had committed to do it. And I even asked the author, I wrote to her, and I said, would you would you consider just damn, you know?
Mhm.
And she wrote back because she was really gracious through the whole thing, and she says, "Well, if people read it that way, then I think that it should be verbalized that way." And I'm like, "Okay, well." So I did it. I wasn't happy about it, but I kind of I did my own little trick, and I wouldn't put the D at the end of God.
Mhm.
It
Oh,
was more
yeah.
like GAH.
I've done that too.
Yeah. So I thought, at least in my heart, I knew I wasn't saying it. So, but it's so fast that you can't hardly even, I don't think you even
Sure.
pick it up. But those are some things that I don't mind curse words every now and then, damn,
Yeah.
hell, and,
Yeah.
but when it gets much more beyond that, like the F bombs and all, I just
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
bring myself, for me,
That's similar for me too.
to do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I did a couple of novels by the same author, beautifully written, fantastic. And I also discovered along the way that the F words and worse were used in there. But these were all people who would use those words in their everyday language. So
Mhm.
it didn't bother me. It wasn't,
Mhm.
it was in the context. It was okay.
Sure.
So yeah, I did it.
And that's something that we do. That's a great point, Deanie, because it's not really us personally. It's our character, the narrator, saying it, and sometimes we have to get over
Yeah.
that hurdle.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard if it's not a part of your everyday language.
No,
It's hard.
definitely not.
It's hard for it to spit it out
It's
sometimes.
too
So.
bad you couldn't find someone to participate in this Zoom who really does the erotica, just to hear their
Yes.
perspective,
Yes.
They sell well, that's all I know.
Yes,
They
they
sell
do.
well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
I'm not going to go there.
it's
That's okay.
and I don't know if there's, in your experience, Emma, is clean to steam, is steam part of erotica in your mind, or is that just
No.
erotica is its own total separate
Erotica is like
category?
after steam, like
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
but yeah, so again, there's the spectrum, and
Mhm.
so yeah, you just figure out where you're comfortable with on that
Mhm.
spectrum, and that's what
Right.
you narrate. And if you're comfortable with it all, great. Like
Have at it, right?
that's what you do.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think it's, and also for new narrators too, if they're coming into it and don't realize, is that somebody coming in?
No,
Nope. Okay. Somebody
it's
else.
my cell phone was
Oh,
doing
okay.
a little
Okay.
ding. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Um, yeah, especially for new narrators coming in, maybe who, absolutely don't want to go that route and they want to stick to more G-rated. So I would say, coming from me as a narrator, those comments when you're on ACX authors, and there's, again, I don't know what it looks like on the author side when they're filling it out, but on our view, there's a box, for like author comments. And that's
Yeah.
usually where they put in who they're going to market to, how big their audience is. I've got so many on Facebook and Twitter and blah, blah, blah. And that's where I feel you should enter your comments about the rating of your book. So
Yeah.
if you're not doing it now, or if you've got a book up now and it's not included, you can go back and edit it and add it. If you can just say something as easy as there are no explicit scenes or language in this book, that's a huge help. Or yes, there are explicit scenes and language in this book. If you're not comfortable with that, then please don't audition.
Close your eyes.
Or they could read
So-
it, and decide for
Yeah.
themselves. So
Yeah, one thing you did, that's a beautiful segue in what I just wanted to say,
Oh.
is that a lot of narrators, newbies especially, will not actually bother to read the book. They just accept it and then they start reading, and later on in the book, there's a lot of surprises. So I couldn't stress enough the importance of having to read that entire book.
yeah.
You might discover somebody has a different accent in chapter 10, or discover some, erotica or something along the way.
Yeah,
or swear words, yeah.
absolutely. There was one scene in the Western romance too that I don't know, as I mentioned last time, kind of crept up on me because I wasn't the best. I'm trying to be better at prepping my books and really going through them a little more with a fine-tooth comb. And the scene popped up as I was getting ready to narrate the chapter, and I kind of caught me off guard. It's not that bad, It's like a Harlequin, And I think for me, I think about. It was called, and still is, I haven't read them in quite a long time. I read them a long time ago and was a big fan of the Harlequin super romance. So it's its own category within Harlequin. And it's a good mix between clean and steam, because the book itself is a little longer than most of the Harlequin books, the little thin ones, but this is a little thicker, and it has a more rounded out story. It builds to the spice, and then it has the solution to whatever the problem is, and then it has a happy ending. And so for me, that would be kind of a sweet spot. I mean, I'm open, to clean all the way up to that point, but I think for me that's a good reference, because I was mentioning in Jessa's group in the conference that I have a series of 4 from like 30 years ago that I kept. I'm not even sure how I got all 4 of them, but they were all, it was a sister story, and each book was a different sister. And they were so good. And it was just a really good rounded out story, and just enough spice, just enough spice.
Did you end up going to the author and getting the permission to narrate the
I've
books?
thought about it. I tried to
Yeah.
look her up online. I
Yeah.
can't find her. So I may have to call Harlequin and ask them,
Who has the rights? Yeah.
and just see, because I think they do have a phone number.
That
So
would be great, wouldn't it?
it was fun. That was one of my favorite,
Yeah.
not being an avid reader growing up, but that was one of my favorites in my earlier days that I really enjoyed. So, well, Emma, any other feedback or advice or comments coming from the publishing side at all? I think you've covered a lot of really good tips for us.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything. Like I said, most authors just don't know,
Yeah.
especially if that's what they're used to writing. They don't know that some people might not want to read that. That's
Right.
because their audience does. And so, yeah, it's our job as narrators to vet any project that comes in, not just for content, but for quality and all of that. And so, yeah, but the more we can talk about these things and come to an understanding, then the better, just for everybody in general. Because I'm sure it's no fun for authors either if they find a voice they love,
Right.
and then they realize that narrator doesn't want to work in that, whatever that content or quality is. And so it goes both ways. So it just benefits us both.
Absolutely.
And I think the most important thing is to just not be judgmental in it. I mean, you figure out what works for your business, and that's what you go for. My brand is Clean Reads, and that's what I do, but I have no judgment for other narrators who don't, and authors who write. Do you?
Yeah.
So I think that's important as we talk about it, is to make sure that we take the judgment out of it, because it's not a judgment call. It's just
Personal
your
preference.
business.
And that's probably how I was perceived when I said, "What's with all the bare chests?" So it must have sounded very judgmental, which it probably was. But Emma, this is not part of this, but I was just wondering if Pam maybe could give me your contact information later on. I'd love to contact you.
Absolutely. I'm on the group as well, so feel free to
Feel free to message each other, or however you want to get in
that's
touch, or
right.
I'll share.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to do that.
Yeah, please do.
And right on the tail end of what Deanie was just saying, in that group that I posted that question, that got a lot of response. Again, it was readers. It was people were looking for historical romance, so no authors, no narrators. But as it got into it, a couple people, maybe they thought I was poo-pooing the steam or something. They're like, well, to each his own. You all find, you find your own category, and what one likes another one doesn't, but what I was really trying to get was, for me as a narrator, what are the different levels of romance in audiobooks. So this has been a big help in discussion. So I thank you both for participating.
Yeah,
and I'll get this up here as quickly as I can, and stay tuned for more events happening in our group. And if you know of an author who can benefit from this information on making your audiobook journey a little easier and less stressful, then by all means, please invite them to join the group. So until next time, everybody take care, and I shall stop recording, and we'll stay on for just a moment, okay?
Okay.